Okay, first of all, welcome everybody. So nice to see you. It's been such a painful week. I just want to thank the people who have called me and reached out to me. You wouldn't have any reason to know, but one of the boys who was killed was from my son's yeshiva in Israel. You know, you think out of 100,000 people, like what are the chances that you would have a connection with somebody? But Donnie Morris was one of the boys from Shalavim. Just a beautiful, amazing, sweet Torah scholar, chesed. He had chen, like your Bobby ever say, oh, you have chen, like, oh, yeah, is this a cup? Just like a shane upon him person, and just the sweetest boy, and just devoted, just amazing person, 19 years old. So he was very sadly one of the people of the 45 who were killed. Before we start, because it's going to be the basis of one of the things that we're going to talk about, is you have read in the papers that there was a stampede. So I just want to tell you there was not a stampede. Stampede is when people are running and they basically are running over each other and falling all over each other, and that's a stampede, like animals stampeding. It was not a stampede, it was a crush. And a crush and a stampede are two different things. You wouldn't really want to have to become expert in knowing the difference between these things, but they are different. A crush is when there are a lot of people who are not moving fast at all, but who are being compressed, where there is a bottleneck in an exit and people are coming closer and closer, and the people behind don't know that there's a bottleneck, and so they keep coming. And until there is a certain limited amount of air and pressure on the bodies, and people are literally, no one who's next to you is doing anything intentionally, and that you are so close, it becomes as if it was one body. And if one person falls or trips, it sends like you can look this up, it sends like a shock wave through the entire group and causes everybody to fall. And it's basically people are crushed to death standing up. And it comes not from people running and being wild or anything, or hysterical or anything. It comes from a horrible convergence of factors, and that's what happened. So it's a very difficult and painful thing to even picture or anything. There were some children who were thrown up and out and saved, who were getting crushed, which is amazing, but just really horrible. But that's the difference between a crush and a stampede, because I have to say a stampede kind of gives you this idea of like, oh, it's like these crazy religious Jews, like all running someplace and being oblivious to other people and being so rude, and like end up killing people. That is not what happened. So it was this crush, this hallway, narrow entrance, people all leaving at one time, and people moving forward and not realizing what was happening until there's a certain number of people per square meter who get into a certain area that then nobody can move, and nobody can tell what's going on. So just really horrible. So that's what physically happened. As far as the family, yes, Dorothy, you can unmute if you had a question.
I have a comment too.
Okay, just a moment. First, Dorothy, if she can.
Was there such a thing as, was this group given permission to be there?
Yes, everybody. There were 100,000 people.
But what I read was that they were talking about doing something after the fact. Is that so? As far as, well, to make it safer for that number of people.
Oh, yes, they will. There's going to be plenty of evaluation, investigation, and blame to go around to everybody. I can tell you, it was such a convergence of factors. There was a slippery
right, that's right. Liquid
platform that was wet. People were sliding. There were small people. It was, and it was the first thing that everybody was going to after the pandemic. So there were even more people than usual. It was such a convergence thing. And you know what? What's really good is that none of us on this call have been appointed to be in charge of figuring it out, which is really good, because there's going to be a whole lot going on, investigation, and there'll be a lot of, this. I said to my husband, I said, wouldn't it be wonderful, except everyone's so afraid of being sued, Wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone could say it was all of our faults? It was the preliminary, it was this, it was that, it was the ramp, it was this. Like if we could all accept responsibility instead of everyone saying, well, it was terrible, but it wasn't my responsibility. So that's actually a different question. And I just want to share with you oh, I'm sorry, Gabi, you had a question, a comment?
No, that the problem was that a lot of the drinks spilled, and it was a metal that makes it more slippery, and they fell down, so they were crouched, lying down on each other.
Yes, but it was because one person fell, and when you're in a crush, what I started to say, I'm not sure if you were on yet, Gabi, when there's a crush, it's like you are one body. And it wasn't that they were running and fell on top of each other. They were standing and were crushed and fell over, because once one person falls, it's as if you are like
dominoes.
It's not even dominoes. You're attached. It is as if you are one mass of humanity. And that is what, so anyway, that's for the experts. That is for the experts to figure out, and they will be figuring that out. And I'm sure there'll be a lot done, and you can be sure that the families will be all involved in addressing this. But the question is, and so what about the families? What about us? How are we supposed to understand this? So we never say that this is the reason something happened, but we are always supposed to say, and what can I learn from it, and what can I do? So Donnie's parents came to our son's yeshiva, to Shalavim. I just want to show, in case you haven't seen, I just wanted to show you a picture of Donnie, just the sweetest boy. That's the sweetest boy. Let's see if I can find it, if I can get to it. We'll see. I may not be able to. Wait, hold on. Yes, I'm going to show this to you. Hold on a second.
Sorry, I missed who is Donnie. I'm so sorry.
Donnie is one of the boys who died. This was the boy. He was from Shalavim, our son's yeshiva. This is Donnie Morris, 19 years old, from New Jersey. And look at that sweet, and he was so happy. This picture is taken at Meron. This is shortly before he died. So you can see there's just like so many people. But I just wanted you to see a face, because when you hear that 45 people died, you can say, oh, that's so terrible. But when you see that sweet face, that's who it is Donnie Morris. And so he was one of 45 who was killed. So his parents came to the yeshiva, and they had the funeral there, and his mother and his father both spoke at the funeral, along with many other people. And they're back now in New Jersey to finish sitting Shiva. They sat Shiva for one day at the yeshiva, and everybody is just devastated. There were 70,000 people who tuned into his funeral. It was live streamed, and it was just an incredible outpouring of people caring and being connected. His parents are now sitting Shiva in New Jersey, and the yeshiva sent out a message from his parents saying that they are looking forward to having people come and share stories about Donnie, talk about what they learned from him and what kind of a person he was, or to hear from the family what kind of a person he was and who he was. And those conversations would be helpful and welcome. And any conversations that were rehashing of what happened in Meron and who was responsible and what happened and how did it happen will be very unwelcome and unhelpful. And I thought, good for them for saying that, because oftentimes I think, when we go to a Shiva house, especially, God forbid, if something tragic happens, someone's sick, people spend a lot of time talking about what happened, what were their last days, what was this, what was that. And instead of talking about the person, which is what we're supposed to be doing. But I thought, I've been obsessing over this since I heard, Friday morning. And I thought, okay, well, if his own parents are in a place where they're like, no, we want to be inspired by Donnie. We don't want to have this conversation of, were there too many people and whose fault, and was it the police, or was it the this, or was it that? And it's like, that is not for now, and it's for other people. It's not for us. Everybody has a different job. We all become very much armchair experts on things. I'm sitting here going over and over as if I could watch the footage and see like what went wrong when, reminded me of when the Challenger blew up. Our daughter, I forget how old she was, but she watched it over and over again on TV. I thought she was gonna get freaked out. She was trying to figure out how it could not have happened, like how to make it not happen. But, it gets to a point where that's not helpful. It is not helpful. And our job is not to put our pain aside, but to transform the pain into something that is appropriate and growthful. So it's so ironic that it happened on Lag BaOmer, which of course is a day of celebration. It's a day of Jewish people coming together from all walks of life, which is why there were so many different kinds of Jewish people who ended up being killed, because there were so many different kinds of Jewish people there. And it's the day where Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying, and Rabbi Akiva started over with 5 new students. And Rabbi Akiva's motto is just start over and move forward. Despair is not an option. Despair is not an option under any circumstances. And that's where, the yeshiva boys are getting, with the help of psychiatrists, psychologists, and rabbis, in conversation, and his parents, and the Jewish people, and because everyone is feeling it to one degree or another. So I said in the Rise email, and this is embarrassing, I know it's not, I'm not proud of this. When I first heard that it happened, and I heard there were 45 people who were killed, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Like I would say about anything, oh, that's terrible. And then I heard that a boy was missing from our son's yeshiva. And because it's my son and his yeshiva, so that feels more personal. And then when I heard that it was this boy who was died, and he kind of seems like a boy, kind of like my son from my son's yeshiva. And all of a sudden that was completely transformed how I felt about it. It felt like I thought I was going to faint. I felt sick. I didn't feel sick when I first heard 45, but I felt sick when I heard who that one of them was. Because I have to say, in my world, even though my son wears a black hat and, my grandson has payas and all that, generally when I see people who are like that, I don't relate. It's like, they don't look like my world. I don't relate. So when I saw some of these other people, I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. That's so sad. That's so awful. But then when I see a boy who looks like, he went to Herzl or Ramah, or, I don't know, Dot or GW or something like that, it's like, oh, now that feels something, that feels personal. So we have this response. Some people like to say it's because we're racist, we're bigoted, we're this, we're that. It's like, no, we're not. God designed us to be concerned about the people to care for the people who we can relate to. It's almost like a defense mechanism. You have to be able to respond to people who are in your circle. You cannot respond to every single situation and every single person with the same degree of emotion, because you would be exhausted. So I just read in Mexico that the rail collapsed and there were, 24 people who were killed. Like, I don't have the energy to respond to all of those people also. And it's not because I majored in Spanish. I spent a lot of my life thinking about Spanish and Mexico and all that. It's like, there's a limit. So our minds have to have a filter for how we relate to different situations and different scenarios. And we care for people who we relate to. And this is how we are. And our goal is to always be trying to expand who it is we relate to. That's our goal. And that goal is defined by the quality called chesed. The quality chesed, which means to extend your boundaries, to go beyond your boundaries, to include other people, not to reach out to them of like, I'm reaching from within me to you, but that my definition of me includes you. You are included in my definition of me, which is why I can relate to you and I can feel for you, because it's as if it is me. It is me. So when something happens to someone you love and you have a visceral reaction, you do. If it's your daughter, even if it's your pet, if it's something that belongs to you, if something happens to it or them, good or bad, you feel it in your kishkas. That's just how it is. We're designed to be like that. But our goal is to grow ourselves so that we feel more. So that word is chesed. So this is words of wisdom. And you know me, you've known me long enough. My guiding light is the Hebrew language. So I'm like, okay, what do we learn from this? Oh, two things I'll just say. I'm actually going to write, now that I have it in my head, I want to write a note to Donnie's parents. We're so young. Donnie's parents. And I want to tell them something I learned from Eliza Bulow, who said that at a funeral, there is a spiritual estate sale, except it's all free. And the estate sale is whatever the qualities were of that person, whatever their mitos, whatever their qualities were, that person no longer being in the world means that the world is missing those things. We're like down a court, if not more. And at a funeral, one of the things that we're supposed to do is lay claim to one of the qualities, one of the mitzvahs they do, one of the qualities that they had, and take it on for ourselves. And it's like an estate sale. I'll take that and I take it on. So I want to say to Donnie's parents that what possible circumstances can you figure there would be for a 19-year-old boy who, no matter, is an amazing person, but what 19-year-old would have 70,000 people witness their funeral? And what I want to say to her is it will take at least 70,000 people to lay claim to his qualities and to carry those on forward into their lives. At least 70,000 people.
Beautiful.
If not more. And that's our answer. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what his parents want us to do. That is what his family wants us to do. I'm like, okay, then I need to kind of get out of my ruminating head of, how did this happen? I can't believe it. People are blah, blah. It's like, for other people, it's not my task. My task is, what do we learn from Donnie? So everyone talked about his chesed, his kindness and always wanting to help. Since he was a little boy, said that when he was 2 years old, he would cry when his father left the house unless his father was going to shul. And then he would let him go. And that he was just like devoted to shul and to davening and to learning since he was a baby. And doing things for people, just acts of kindness. He just always wanted to help people. So here's what I discovered. I thought, okay, I need to find a connection between what happened and Donnie's kindness and like take that on, like not just a random act of kindness, but a very specific act of kindness. I'm just saying this to do at least through the shloshim, through the 30 days after his death. I would like to commit to longer, but I'm not going to make a promise I can't keep. So to take it on for 30 days. So I looked up the word in Hebrew for crush. Was to crush something into a tight quarters. And the word is lidchos. So the root of that is dalid chet samech. Dalid chet samech, if you rearrange those letters, are chet samech dalid, which is chesed.
Wow.
Kindness. The twisted form of crush, or the straightened out form of crush, is kindness. It says, how can we understand that? It's like, when you think about the crushing in a negative way does what kindness does in a positive way. Because we said what happens dynamically in a crush is that the people become one mass. So that if one person falls, everybody falls. Not because they're tripping on each other in running, but because they're so smushed together, it's as if it was one thing, one entity. And what does chesed do? It's acts of kindness that make us as if we are one. That is the goal. That's how we get to a feeling of oneness, is through doing acts of kindness, so that your care and your concern becomes mine. It's like, I feel for you because I'm connected to you, because I include you in my reality and in my identity. I thought, what could be more perfect than to undo the crush and rearrange that dalid chet samech into chet samech dalid, in acts of loving kindness.
Amazing.
So I thought that helps me. So I was like, what's it going to be? Because I'd written to my son, I said, I want to do something in memory of Donnie, and I don't know what to do. So I just thought, okay, go to my source, go to a Hebrew dictionary, the answer for everything. So to see that, it's like, okay, acts of loving kindness. So a person doesn't have to commit to doing that for the rest of their lives. You can do an act of kindness in memory of Donnie Morris, and in fact, in memory of anybody or everybody or whatever it is, that is always something that is an aliyah for their neshama, an elevation for the person's neshama who passed away. Because when we are inspired by them, they get the spiritual credit for it, and they are elevated in addition to we who are elevated as well. So I wanted to share that with you, and that's our approach. I've heard people speak who have undergone horrible tragedies. Rebbetzin Henkin in Israel, her son and daughter-in-law were murdered by Palestinian terrorists, and the grandchildren survived, but the parents did not. And she spoke and she said, move forward. That's what we do. We move forward. Same thing with Racheli Frankel, whose son was abducted, also killed by Palestinians, along with the other two boys. Move forward. And I find it very interesting, I have to say, it's the mothers who are speaking this. It is the mothers who are speaking this. So it's Rebbetzin Henkin, Racheli Frankel. Donnie's mother spoke first at the funeral, and then his father spoke at the end as well. But how a mother gets up and is able to speak about her child in that way is beyond my comprehension, really beyond my comprehension. Everybody was just sitting there sobbing. At the yeshiva, I didn't put up the picture for you, but there were thousands of people at the yeshiva for the funeral, and there was not one sound, before it started. Everyone was just standing there. In fact, I thought the screen had frozen because nobody was moving. And you just see this sea of white shirts and black pants, and everybody was just totally silent. And then after the funeral, they started singing. They started singing for, yes, many survivors move forward. Mary, yeah, exactly. The Jewish people after the Holocaust, move forward. You just pick up and you move forward. And that is our answer. And as I said, it is so tempting. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've been online. It's ridiculous looking at all of the accounts as if my looking at it would make it turn out differently. So it's like, that is not our role. Our role is, so what do we do and what's our answer? And it is as a tribute to the people who have passed away, who died, is to take their legacy and to carry it forward, and that's our opportunity. And then people can always say, when we do acts of chesed, the other chesed that has been done is the people who just came out of the woodwork to help, including Israeli Arabs who were bringing food to people, and people who opened up their homes and were doing everything possible to help the survivors from this event and helping them. It was such an outpouring. It's like, you know what? What does it take to get us to do acts of kindness for one another? The world has been struggling so much, and Israel, things have been pretty crazy. There's all the different protests, regardless of what side you're on. Like, it's been a little crazy. So with this, like, what do we do? So it's kind of like, wake up, everybody. We're supposed to be all together. We are supposed to be doing acts of kindness. And, why does it have to be that there is a tragedy in order to get us to be nice to each other? It's like, why is that the case? So last week on Lag BaOmer was the week of Hod on the Sfirot. The week of Hod is about yielding and acknowledging other. And it was on the day of Hod. So Lag BaOmer is as Hod Sheba Hod, which is the day of yielding, of the week of yielding. It's the most yielding day, the most space creating day. That's what Hod is. You make space. Like, how is it on the day that is about making space for others that there was no space even to breathe? Can we take a lesson and say, wow, I think we need to work on our Hod. I think we need to work on making space for the other person, the other person's physical presence, the other person's perspective, the other person's opinion, the other person's choices, desires. We think everything has to be our way, and again, we've talked about a number of times, we make everything into a federal case. Everything is like, I'm just standing on principle and everything is a federal case. It's like, could you let it go and just make space for the other person? Okay, so what? Yield. Yield. So I think that's another lesson that we can take away is that this day of Hod Sheba Hod turned into a day where there was no room at all. And if we want to say, let's make space for other people in our families, sometimes your family is the hardest group to make space for. And I don't mean just physically in your house, but what are you going to do with those people? It's like in the magazines at the holidays, in addition to telling you, what your schedule should be for getting your turkey in the oven on time, it's like how to deal with, Aunt Martha who comes over and always has opinions about blah, blah, blah. What are you going to do with, Uncle Joe who blah, blah, blah. It's like, this is a challenge, making room for other people's Narishkeit. We think it's Narishkeit. They think it's important. They think our stuff is Narishkeit. So guess what? We're in the same boat when we're being labeled by other people as well. It's just make space. Make space. So that's the Hod. The other piece is, and I'm taking this from Rabbi Liban, who shared this over Shabbos, which is that the word for honoring people, honoring somebody, is the word kavod, as in the mitzvah, kabed et avicha ve'et imecha. I'm sorry, kabed et imecha ve'et avicha. You shall honor your mother and father. I'm sorry, you shall honor your father and mother. You shall honor. So the word is kavod, and the root of that is kaf vet dalet. It's the same as the word kaved, which means heavy. So the reason it's the same is that when you honor somebody, it means that you treat them as a weighty individual. And I don't mean overweight. I mean that their existence has tremendous significance. It's kaved. It is not light in your eye. Somebody else's honor that's what it means to give somebody honor, kavod. It means to treat them like they are really of tremendous significance, tremendous weight. Given that the people who died from literally the weight, whether it was vertical or horizontal, the weight of other people crushing them. We have again the wrong idea about weight, that we have the kaved, the weight, the honor turns into that weightiness that is crushing, instead of the kavod, the honor that is due to people. This does not mean that the people who died were not honoring people. It doesn't mean that those people were not making room for them. As far as I can tell, the people who passed away were all incredible people who were on the extreme of the honoring and giving. But sometimes things happen and we need to take a close look at ourselves. Yes, Etta.
I was just remembering that the reason they have Lag BaOmer is because Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying on that day. And
that's exactly right.
Their problem, they didn't respect each other.
Right. They did not give each other enough respect. And it says, it's not like they were a bunch of hooligans. The Rabbi Akiva's students were at a very, very high level. But when you're at that high of a level, you're judged with a very fine-tooth comb. It says it's the difference between weighing out diamonds and coal or potatoes. It says, you put the potatoes on the scale, and if it's around, 1.5 to 2 pounds, that's fine. I can make my kugel with that. It doesn't make a difference. But if I'm measuring diamonds, it's going to be within whatever of an ounce, it's going to be very, very carefully weighed. And that Rabbi Akiva students were like diamonds. And so any flaw in them would have drastic consequences, and it did. So it's exactly right, Etta, of having that Rabbi Akiva students stopped dying, but the reason they had died was not enough kavod, that they were not weighty enough in each other's eyes, which often happens when you have people who are all very, I think we probably have mentioned this other times. In fact, I think I did it at the beginning of COVID, because I think it's the same thing. We talked about COVID sounding like covet, like honor, and, about honoring people. And that if you go someplace, let's say you're a professional, whatever realm, and you go to a conference for all the people who are the amazing people in your profession, do people stand there in awe of the other people who are at the conference and say, like, I can't believe I'm in the presence of all these amazing people? It's like, no, oh, hi, Lisa, good to see you. Let's go get a beer. Like, it's like, do you have any sense of who you are in the presence of? That when we're in the presence of a whole lot of great people, we forget they're great. If there aren't so many great people, then they stand out. But when we're in the presence of a lot of great people, it's actually hard to remember that we're in the presence of great people. So they were with each other, and they did not have enough kavod for each other. And so here we have again the day when this was the whole problem, and it surfaces again with the kaved, with the weight pressing and turning into something that causes death at the same time. Very, very challenging. So we have the idea of the kavod, of honor, because another person's dignity is very kaved. It's very heavy, it's very weighty to us. And if we don't respect it, we can end up causing a problem. And then we have the idea of the crush that can be reformatted to turn into chesed. And that when we have chesed, we are turned into one being through our acts of kindness, and not through something that turns it into a death trap. And so that is our goal, is to be able to navigate in that way and take with us. And we want to take from Donnie and from the others as well. I mean, like, one of the little boys who was killed, his parents had promised him the trip to Meron as a prize for his diligent studies. And his Rebbe had taken him, this little boy, and his own son to Meron for Lag BaOmer. He was so thrilled. And both little boys were killed, the Rebbe's son and this little boy who had gotten it as a prize. And, the Rebbe, of course, was overwhelmed with his own grief of losing his son and having been responsible for this other little boy, and having to go to the parents and be completely devastated. And the parents were like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. There's nothing you could do. Like, let's not even talk about that. So it reminds me too, and I may have shared this a long time ago because it happened a while ago. My nephew was in the IDF, and he was in the tank crew, and he was a tank driver. It's a very challenging job. And the way it works is the tank driver can't actually see where the tank is going. So the commander, who's on the outside of the tank, gives the commands or something, or has the person who has like the periscope thing, but it's not the driver. It's like two separate people. That made me very nervous. They were doing training exercises. It wasn't an actual battle. And the training had been for a couple of days, and there were medics who had fallen asleep on the ground. And the commander, it was early morning sun, and the commander didn't see the boys on the ground. And the tank hit one of the boys, and who was sleeping. And he was on life support for a few days, and then he died. And my nephew was just devastated that he would be the cause, even indirectly, of this happening. It was obviously a pure accident. But he went to the Shiva house, with his family, with my sister and her family, and they went to see the parents. And it was somebody he could totally relate to. It was somebody who had been in B'nai Akiva, and like somebody just like him. Talk about people you can relate to. And went to the parents, and the parents were like, do not blame yourself. We don't want you thinking about this as anything. You were not responsible, and this is, God runs the world, and this was completely not your fault. And my nephew then took on himself to learn. I don't remember what he learned in memory of this boy for a year until the time of his yahrzeit, and then went to the family again at the yahrzeit after a year to be with them. And it's like, that's what we do with tragedy, with all tragedies, personal tragedies, communal tragedies, is we turn it into something so that we don't get swallowed up by a black hole of pain and grief. Otherwise, it just becomes unbearable, really unbearable. So this is our goal. And we each find, says, we don't know why it happened. That's not for us to know, but we can still answer the question of, what do I do with it? So I shared with you what I want to do with it, because as I said, Hebrew words are that's my go-to thing. Like, what does this mean? It's like, well, let's look it up and see what it means, and that will tell me what it means for me. But you're welcome to share it, and it could be for any situation. Acts of kindness can be banked, can be directed towards anything, for someone's refuah, for someone's healing, for someone's success in, finding a mate, finding a job, finding a house, finding a place to live. Anything that we want, acts of kindness are always an answer. It's not like, oh, well, they only work in this case where you have the word for crush and it gets, turned into chesed. Chesed is always an answer for everybody's situation, to be able to be directed in any way. Thoughts or comments other than things that have to do with what physically happened and made wrong, which I, in spite of my hours and hours online, I have no idea. But anything else that is related to that, or just pain, difficulty, tragedy.
You did a beautiful job, Ellyn, in discussing this. You really did, because it's a very difficult. It's so horrible, but you've done such, it's a relief to hear something like this, because I keep going over and over it in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. The only thing I want to say is, people who are in my opinion, are misguided, and they donate to rather obscure or other charities that they're really not attached to. That is something that really bothers me. And which is, we get involved in the Reverend Moon and things like, we're not, if it's something goofy, we're in the forefront.
Yes, that's for sure. We do that. Yeah, the Jewish people are very generous, not always wise in their allocation of scarce resources. So that's the other thing, of course, is tzedakah that is done in the merit for refuah. I know that a Torah scroll is being written for one of the boys, since it said, he obviously will never merit to have any children, and to have something as to follow. But what we're taught, which I think is so, so beautiful, which is that it says, who are our real children? It's like, well, I thought my children were Audrey and Benjamin. So our real children are our good deeds, and that they take on a reality that we will see in the world to come. So we will see them, that they'll be each act of kindness, each mitzvah creates a real entity, and we will see that. It even talks about that a couple who is married that is not able to have physical children, says that every act of intimacy that they have actually does create a child. Luckily, you don't have to raise them and pay for their college or do any of those things, but that each act of coming together creates a reality, and they will see those children when they go to the world to come. And so that basically saying that the things we do create realities. It's not just like a warm glow in our hearts or a good feeling in our mind or something that's more, I don't know, abstract. Basically what it's saying is it's not abstract. It is not abstract, that realities are created around what we do. And that is our answer to every situation. That's our situation when we want to honor somebody too. What do? Is we make donations in honor of somebody. We do something in honor. So whether it's to celebrate or to be sad about. We take something, because emotion means motion, that there is something to do. So it's a little bit related to, I'll just tie it in with this a little bit here, is that this week is the concluding parshas of the book of Vayikra, of Leviticus. And we are now going to have the parsha Bahar and Bechukotai. Bahar and Bechukotai, which is always hard to kind of say, starts off, and that's on page 708 or 709 if you have the Chumash. And it says, "Im Bechukotai telechu," that it says, if you will, in the English, it says, if you will follow my decrees, but the word telechu comes from the word holech, which means to walk. If you will walk in my decrees, if you will walk in my decrees. And one beautiful understanding of this is that walking means moving forward. It means going. That is how we live our Judaism. That's how we live Torah. And it doesn't just refer to halacha, which also comes from the same word holech, is to walk in that way, like you're to walk your talk. But it also means that it means to go. So if something's not really working for you, I learned this in Ulpan, zelo holechli, it's not going for me. We say that it's not going for me. Zelo holechli. So the idea of something of going is to not get bogged down, to not get caught, to not fall into the trap or into the grip of the pain and despair. And while there is a time and a place and a way to do all that, even in that, there are ways to do it. Like Donnie's parents saying, we want to talk about who Donnie was as a person. We want to talk about his qualities, his kindness, his joy of life, the way he helped everybody, the way he always wanted to help people. We want to hear that. We don't want to hear about how the tragedy happened. It's not just like, oh, we're trying to block it out. It's like, that doesn't help anything. It doesn't do anything. We think it does, but it really doesn't. We think it does. It's like when people go over and over again. I remember, sitting Shiva for my mom, and she was sick, and people would come and say, so what happened? And, people mean well, they really do, because they want to commiserate. But what happened? It's like, that is so not relevant. Like, let me tell you about, one of the last days of her life in the middle of the night when she said, I need Zelig Pliskin. Let me talk to you about that, of like how that she wanted to have some Torah, that was one of the last things she wanted was more Torah. That is more relevant than like, what exactly kind of cancers did she have and which one was the worst one, and did she have chemo and did it not work or did it work? It's like, this is not grand rounds here, folks. It is a Shiva house. And so we don't know what to do, and we want to express care and concern, and we think it's about interviewing people and asking these questions. And it's really about, tell me about your son. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about, something your relative taught you that you will always remember. Tell me about, anything that is about the person. And that is the point. And it's not just to kind of be nice, it's because we're supposed to take something from the Shiva call. It's not just that we go to, oh, I have to make a Shiva have people act as like, I have to go to the store and I have to make a Shiva call. It's like, just like you go to the store to get something, we go to the Shiva call to get something as well, which is inspiration about the person who passed away. Same thing with a funeral. I hate to say this, sounds terrible. I love funerals. I love to hear about people who maybe I knew them, maybe I didn't know them, or I didn't know them the way their family talks about them. And as I said, and the estate sale, the spiritual estate sale, what can I take from this person who has an aspect of their life that now needs to be in this world that is not in the world anymore, that I can take on for myself? And that's my best way to really comfort somebody. And it's a very powerful, positive, empowering Jewish way to deal with things. That's just what we do. So Rabbi Akiva, in his own way, through the centuries, is a source of strength and support to the families and of all the Jewish people at this time. So at the same time, having this tragedy happen on Lag BaOmer, it's like, how could this be something so horrible? The biggest peacetime disaster for Israel to happen? How can this be? Rabbi Akiva himself is the comfort for the situation. It's like, just start over, keep going forward. So that's what we need to do. That's what our answer for everything is, just to keep moving forward. And I appreciate you letting me say this, because I'm talking mostly to myself, because I've been waking up every morning with the biggest pit in my stomach and just feeling sick, And, my son had to explain it to his children. Like, how do you explain? I mean, obviously they knew thousands of people are coming to the yeshiva for a funeral. They knew what was happening. How do you explain this to like a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old? It's just so awful. So yeah, this is what we do. We just keep moving forward, move forward. Any other thoughts or questions or comments or any other ideas or things that you have learned over time that are helpful in these challenging situations to, I won't say to deal with, because it's not that you're dealing with it, it's our response, of what our response is.
Hey, Ellyn.
Yes, Marla.
I do like that you have taken the time. Moving forward is part of the process. It's not just one thing. You took time to grieve what happened. So I like that you grieve, that we all grieve, and now we're coming together to help us to move forward.
Very good point. So one of the things that's very important is, thank you, Marla, is that moving forward doesn't mean you pretend like it didn't happen and you don't experience your emotions. Part of moving forward is to feel the pain, which is what Shiva is for. Shiva is to feel the pain, appropriate pain, the pain of what you're missing. So you're supposed to feel that pain in the deepest way possible, in the presence of community, so you can bear it. So the person making a Shiva call, I've sometimes have described it to people as, you're there to be the sponge. Somebody's like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. It's like, you don't have to do anything. You sit there. Your presence is as a sponge to be with the person so that they can safely be in their pain. Which is what they did at the yeshiva. They had, the boys found out right before Shabbos that he had died. He had been missing since the night before, so everybody was just completely frantic. And then they found just right before Shabbos that he had died. And they had all these boys who, first of all, mind you, have gone through this entire year with all the COVID things going on, the restrictions, the outbreaks, the quarantining, and it's been such a year, such a bizarre year. And their school year's almost over. It ends, I think, right after Shavuos. So this is how they're ending their year, is with their classmate. So it's just so horrible. And so they had psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors and rabbis. The counselors met first with the rabbis, the staff, who were themselves suffering. And then they met with all the boys, and they had small group conversations, and they met with people individually. And actually, Benjamin, our son, said that he was very impressed at the grieving of the boys, meaning that everyone was so devastated, because 19-year-old boys are not necessarily the ones who are interested in showing the most emotion. They're kind of whatever. I don't want to say macho, but it could be not a thing to be sitting and crying when you're a 19-year-old boy. And that they were all so emotional and feeling the pain and having a safe place and way to feel it. And the fact that they got to be with Donnie's parents at the yeshiva. So the head of the yeshiva asked the family to please have the funeral at the yeshiva. Originally it was going to be in Jerusalem. And he asked, can you please do it at Shalavim, at the yeshiva, so we can all be here with you for it? And they agreed. And one of the families at the yeshiva moved out of their apartment so that Donnie's family could move in. We were so happy. Our daughter-in-law was able to make breakfast for Donnie's family for the day of Shiva and take it over to them. And the boys had an outlet for it. Part of what is hard about grief is our society, not the Jewish world, our society doesn't allow for what's it called? An expression of it. There's no safe place to do it. You're expected to come back to work. And people have said that. I remember when I worked at the bank, this man came back after his wife of 50 years died. He came back to work the next day. Like, Charlie, like, what are you doing here? Well, I thought it'd be good, get back to work, kind of keep my mind off of things, it's because, it's been really hard. I'm like, whoa. So if there's no outlet, if there is no safe space and there is no process that's there, people are in too much grief to think of, gee, I wonder what the process would be. I know I'll call 10 people and have them come over to my house every couple, minutes. People aren't going to do that. You're in too much distress. That's, I think, the beauty of being Jewish is we have a script for this. You don't have to make it up. You just there's just a playbook. Everyone knows what to do. They do it, and you just go into it, and you have a process, you have a place, you have a script, and you have a way to be able to engage with your grief, which is the first stage of being able to move forward. Because if you don't have a chance to really engage with it, it's sit there, and it'll come out in other ways. It'll come out in other ways. But this is a healthy way to do it. So you're absolutely right, is feeling the grief. What's amazing is people feeling the grief who are so tangentially connected. And yet that is the goal, is that we're supposed to be able to feel it. So that's related to this week's Sefira. This week's Sefira is Yesod. And Yesod is bonding. How do you bond with another person in a healthy way? You bond by feeling that they are at one with you. And you can do that through, again, like you can go to a funeral of someone I didn't even know, but by the time I'm done, I feel like I really knew you. That's what you do. Or I helped you with something. So now I'm involved in your life, your simcha, your challenge, your difficulty. All of that means like I feel connected to you. That is Yesod. And I think, again, like from Donnie's parents and his family to feel like there are 70,000 people who feel connected, even though I'm sure there were some people who tuned in initially just, I won't say voyeuristic, but, just because like, oh, this is a tragedy for the Jewish people, I should really like listen to this. But after they heard about him for an hour plus, they're like, wow, what a boy, what a loss to our people. And people like sobbing who never met him. That's Yesod. That's the ability to feel that ultimate connection, which is why Yesod is represented by sexuality. It has to do with the coming together. Two bodies as one. That's Yesod. And that we're not trying to sexually come together with everybody, but we're supposed to spiritually come together with everybody and feel that bonding and that connection. And when we do, it's almost like I in a way, I was not happy that people were so sad, but happy that people were so sad. And the fact that people were calling me, this is not, God forbid, this was not my child. It wasn't the child of my child, God forbid. It was the student of my son in Israel. I'm like 5 steps removed. And yet people are calling like, I just called to give my condolences to you about the boy from Benjamin's yeshiva who died. I'm so sorry. I'm like, thank you, because it really felt like it was a relative. When we feel that, I feel like, thank God we're feeling this. That's a good sign. It's like a, I don't know, take us in for a spiritual check. How connected are the Jewish people really? It's like, well, let's see what happens when there's a tragedy. I'm not saying God said, let's see what happens in the tragedy, but you can see what happens when there's a tragedy. How connected do people really feel? It's like, actually, they feel really connected. They really do feel connected. Thank God. And now we just want to build on that and say, and can we do this when there's not a tragedy? Can we do this like on every day? Can we do this on any other occasion when there's not something horrible happening? Can we muster this same place of being connected with each other. So God willing, we will take the idea of this dachus, of this compression, this crush, and change it into chesed, and take that as not the lesson, but as the inspiration for how do we do this? How do we change this and reshape the material? Because ultimately what we're looking to do is transformation. By definition, transformation. Okay. Just a second, Marsh. That the transformation that we're looking to have is the ability to take what we've got, work with what we've got, and turn ourselves into something more and something better. And anything that comes along, and we're supposed to understand that all circumstances in our life, whether they are in our personal life, our communal life, whatever, we're supposed to use every scenario as a growth opportunity. And our question isn't supposed to be, and I heard this from Rabbi Berkowitz, who said we should not, Rabbi Sittner, who said we should not say lama, which means why. Why did this happen? Lama, why did this happen? That we are supposed to say the same word, and then say it differently, lama, which means for what? For what? What am I supposed to do now? And that's ultimately the question. Marcia asked me, were the 3 kidnapped and murdered boys from the same yeshiva? I believe they were. Actually, one of the 3 kidnapped boys, this was already a number of years ago, was from our son's community also. So that was, yeah. So Racheli Frankel, he was their son, Naftali, was from Shalavim also. So they had that.
She spoke to us, remember?
Yeah, she spoke to us on our women's trip. It was very powerful.
So Ellen,
we should take, I'm sorry, what, Gabi?
Yeah, just if you know of any place to donate for the families of
that's what I was saying. Be careful.
Yeah, be careful. So Marcia said that there are scammers concerning this tragedy, that there will unfortunately be those people who are going to be saying that they're collecting money. I can let you know what it will be, because I asked Benjamin, our son, to let us know whatever's going to be done at Shalavim for the family or whatever. So I can let you know when I hear of something that's legitimate, because that's sadly, there's always people out there ready to wreck up any good thing who are going to be saying that they're collecting money for the family. Yes, Etta.
I'm sorry. Just real quick, there's also a Don Magen David, and there is Zaka, and there are some that are legitimate that have been in Israel for 100 years, and you can always make donations to the ambulance. Magen David, isn't that it? And
yes, Magen David Adom is the
ambulance
service, and then Zaka is the people who deal with the people who have passed away. They
do
saints.
Such a mitzvah.
They are saints. Or to give directly to the families, there will be funds, and I'll find out. Etta.
I've got a link from Rhoda Pittler, a lady in the community, and it was for the family of a young father who passed away, and it's his uncle collecting some money.
Great.
So he left.
Okay, thank you. We'll see if we can put together like a list, and I'm not sure. I'm sure in the coming weeks there's going to be a lot. There were a lot of young fathers who were killed, leaving a lot of orphans.
Children, yes. One had 13 children he left.
It was
just horrible. Anyway, we should only hear good things and do positive things.
We should have this road to vote. We should have only good news. And we should take any bad news we have and transform it into joy, because that is our obligation, to take a crush and turn it into chesed, to take the weight of kaved and turn it into kavod, into honor, and to take the squeezing that we may do to one another in other ways where we don't make room, and have the hod and have the yielding and create space for others in our lives. And God willing, with that and our efforts, as the people said continuously at the funeral, and that God in the future should wipe away all of our tears and we should only have shalom and only have peace and well-being. And that will be, God willing, our future. So thank you so much for letting me share this with you today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ellyn. It was wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And everyone should be well and healthy, happy, and move forward. And I think, one thing I just want to say to differentiate, we never say that people should get over anything. People always say, did they get over this? Like, we don't get over anything. We move forward with it. And that is a very different thing. We move forward with it. And we find a place to put it. We find a way to integrate it into our new reality. But we don't let go, and we don't get over it, because that's not possible, and it is an artificial expectation. People are saying the Jews should get over Egypt already. Like, why do we keep talking about that? We're still talking about that. We should get over the Holocaust. We should get over this. We should get over that. It's like, we don't get over it, but we take it with us and we move forward with it. And that's our goal, is to find the way to carry it. The best way to carry a weight is to integrate it. Sometimes when I've put on like 6 pounds or something, which I have recently, I think, wow, I like put on a 6-pound brisket, which if you're schlepping around a 6-pound brisket, it's really heavy. But I don't necessarily notice that I've gained 6 pounds because it's in me. So it's like, weight can be carried when it is integrated. So pain can be carried when it is integrated and it is channeled, and then you actually can carry it. That's amazing. And something that is even fairly light becomes burdensome when it's externalized. When it is internalized and reformatted, it can actually be carried. So God willing, Hashem should not give us burdens to carry, though all of us have them, but Hashem should not give them to us, and we should be able to find ways of moving forward with joy and carrying our pain in a way that allows us to transform that pain into moments of joy and happiness. So thank you very much. I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
And please give our love to Dalia and Benjamin. And
thank you.
Please. That we're with them, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
right.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Well.
Bye, everybody. Please take care.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ellyn?
Yes.
Wow, that was a beautiful tribute today. I feel like I've talked to you so many times and I wasn't aware of this. So I'm so sorry for you, because I was like, I just spoke to you yesterday, and I didn't know anything. And so I'm just really sorry. It is when it's close to you, it really hits home. And
it's so, I really was embarrassed. I mean, I heard about it on Thursday night. I heard about it. And then, I'm sorry, Thursday during the day. And then Thursday night, when we talked to Benjamin and he told us, and his voice, when your child is hurting, obviously nothing is worse.
Right.
And I heard his voice and he said, one of the boys is missing. And I was like, I was in pain for that boy. I was in pain for that boy's parents. I was in pain for my own son, for everybody. And I was like, oh my God. And then I thought, you know what? They'll find him. I mean, what are the chances out of 100,000 people that there would be something wrong? Like, why would he be one of the people that there was something happened to? And then in the morning, I got a text from Sue Gerson saying, I'm so sorry that one of the boys killed was from your son's yeshiva. I thought I was going to just pass out. And I was like, he's dead. I like, and in fact, I said, are you sure? I said, I knew he was missing. He said, no. I said, are you sure? How do you know? She said, I have his name. It's him. It's Shalavim. And I was like, I couldn't breathe. And then also I just felt like my legs were going to collapse under me. And I'm like, I don't even know this kid, but it was just so close. And then I'm thinking, oh, poor Benjamin, for him as a father, as the Rebbe of these boys, and dealing with that grief of all these, the entire, 60 boys. And it's, right. I just walked around like trying not just crying all day. And then on Shabbos, like trying not to cry. And
well, it's weird because we stopped by first to Rabbi Mintz at his new school, and I hadn't heard anything about it. And this was like one of his first things that he have in person. And I was so excited for him. And I saw some H people, and, I was like, well, I was kind of surprised to see them there. And I was talking to them, and he said he wanted to connect because of the tragedy. And I hadn't heard a word. So I didn't even know what he was talking about, and, then he kind of told me, and then of course you hear, I heard across the board, all these different stories of what had happened. And it's like, it wasn't anything of what you said. I heard from fires to stampedes to but collapsing of bleachers. I mean,
that's what I heard first, collapsing of bleachers.
And with something with like maybe around a fires. I don't know, but it was like the bleachers, but it was still like people just like that, right? And I didn't realize there were that many people there, 100,000 people. That kind of sounds like when they had that big. Remember when they had the big Siyum somewhere, or wasn't it on the East Coast?
Yeah, the Siyum Hashas, 75,000 people. Yeah. But those people were all in stadium seats with a stadium that was built safely. But you know what? There have been tragedies throughout the world that are crushes, and they're always reported as stampedes. It happens oftentimes at religious events or sporting events. And it's not stampedes are when people are running away from something. They're trying to get away from a threat, like God forbid there's a bomb or something like that, and people are running, and then that's a stampede. This was bottleneck crush. And it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Totally different thing. Plus, I think it takes away like the negative, I don't know, when you hear like, people were stampeding, like you make it, that sounds like there's something wrong with the people. Like what kind of people
would run over? I know, because then they showed, I did see a picture of all the people, and it was all ages. And I'm thinking to myself, because I thought I heard originally stampede too. I said,
that's how it was called.
I can't, like they were old, like it looked like old distinguished rabbis. And I'm thinking, how do you do that?
They didn't. It was not. So the word stampede, that's why like language is so important. So stampede is the word they use, but that's not what it was. So I've read the other. Now, not that this makes me feel better, but it made me feel better because the idea of Jewish people stampeding and just being so oblivious to other people and like plowing them over, it's just like, that was really, I'm like, stampeding, like I just can't believe it. But then someone posted that it was not a stampede. It's usually called a stampede, but if you look up on Google, what's the difference between a stampede and a crush? And it was this narrow hall, like with this ramp, and that there is a question about the police. Did they close off the exit, or they made it too small? And they got stuck, and then other people kept coming, and they didn't know. The people behind didn't know, and they just kept moving forward, and people were crushed, and nobody could hear anything because the people couldn't breathe. So it was just, I mean, I can't imagine anything more horrific. I mean, there are more things that are more horrific, but just so awful. So I keep like replaying this in my mind. I'm like, okay, now I have something to do with it, which is to take that word.
Well, I like how you turned it around, because on Lag BaOmer, and it's wild because Rabbi Mintz's wife, Hindi, she lost her brother in a Lag BaOmer boating accident.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And so, for her, I went up to her and I said, this has got to be just the most bittersweet day, because it's supposed to be a happy day, but it's his yard site. And he was out selling. It was just a freak accident that just happened, and it's like so weird when you have days that are supposed to be just full of joy, and how I don't know, it's kind of like comes full circle, and for whatever the reason, you remember, and I don't know. I mean, she was there at the celebration doing, because community work, doing what she was doing, but yet inside feeling her own grief. And then she did leave early. She said the family always has a, because they're all over, you know, Zoom get together and I guess davening and stuff. But it's just weird that this would happen also, like on Lag BaOmer, when you're doing like, I mean, that gift, your story about the two young boys, you know, something they would look forward to. And what do you say? I don't know what you say. It's just, I guess God has a plan. There's nothing to say.
There's nothing to say. So it says like, that's why we're supposed to say, so that when Rabbi Sittner said, don't say lama, don't say why, say lama. For what? For what am I supposed?
I wrote that down because it's
really,
very interesting. It's really, you have to really think about that. That goes back to learning the Hebrew, because if I really understood, that's what gets me, because it's such a beautiful language. There's so many, you know, things in it, but if you don't know it, then you miss out.
That's right. And it's, you know,
miss out.
And for me, it helps me, you know, it helps me to be able to say, okay, like, so what should it be? I mean, not that in a way that made any difference, because you can pick anything to do, and anything that's a positive thing is going to be good. It doesn't really make a difference, but I don't know. I'm like too neurotic. I'm like, well, what should it be? What should it be? And I'm like, okay, so I'm going to just look up and see how you say crush in Hebrew. Because once I learned that there was a difference between the crush and the stampede, I'm like, okay, this is significant. What does it mean? How do you say it in Hebrew? So when I saw the letters, I'm like, oh, that is really interesting. There's Dalet, Chet, Samech. All you got to do is rearrange that, and that tells me what I need to do. So, I mean, that's for me. Someone else might say, you know, I'm going to take Lamed Gimel, which means 33, and do 33, you know, dollars of tzedakah a week. I mean, anybody, you can do whatever is meaningful to you, and it will, as long as it's a good thing, it will be the right thing. But I always have to find like the word connection.
I don't know. It's taking it to the next level. It's very fascinating, and I think you turned it into a nice. It's again a bittersweet lesson. You know, I guess there's always good out of the bad. I don't know how you say that, but
it's life. You know, it is the, you know, the very famous song in Israel, which is, let's see. Al hadvash v'al ha'oketz, al hamar v'hamatok. It's a Naomi Shemer song.
I don't know.
And al hadvash v'al ha'oketz means on the honey and on the sting, on the thorn. Al hamar, like maror, on the bitter, v'al matok, and the sweet. That is life. It's al hadvash v'al ha'oketz, al hamar v'hamatok.
All connected.
And right? It says al kol eileh, and on all of these, al kol eileh, shmor na li eli. So they had like, you know, it's a beautiful, beautiful song, and the words are about life is bittersweet. It has the thorn, it has the sting, and it has the honey. You know, the bee gives you the honey and the sting. There's the the sweet, bitter, and the sweet.
That's I never thought about it that way, but that sounds beautiful.
It's really beautiful. Have you ever heard of Kululam? They haven't done it since Corona, but Kululam is a thing in Israel where they bring together in one small space like thousands of people to all sing a song together, and they rehearse it and then they perform it. And if you Google Kululam, I think it's Kululam, Kululam. Actually, one woman I remember was asking if she wanted to come on the women's trip with me, and she said, if you can arrange for us to be in a Kululam concert, I'll go. I'm like, I don't think I'll be able to do that. Yeah, and it was like thousands of people, Jewish people singing this, and they have lights and a band and the whole thing, and it's just amazing, really amazing.
Yeah.
But now that won't be happening.
Rabbi Meyer gave a really nice sermon one Shabbos about really what singing is and prayer, and singing. And when you sing something out loud as a community, it penetrates your whole neshama in a way that, and the whole, I mean, I wish I could repeat what he said, but that was basically the essence. And just about song and what it means. Does it, and unity and prayer and community and singing, not just saying it quietly, but belting
singing,
it out.
singing. Yeah, that's why for me in davening, the singing is, the most important thing.
Me too. Sometimes
I mean, if there's not good singing,
it almost
I
makes you cry, right? Just bring tears to your eyes sometimes.
I mean, there's nothing more powerful to me than to have spirited davening, the person who's leading the song, everybody joining in. That is my path. And without it, I feel like I just wither. I really do.
Right.
So there's something else that happens when people sing together, which is when people sing together, they are listening, they are trying to match up everybody else. When people are having a conversation or talking, it's kind of like each person for themselves. People say things, I disagree with you, this, that, my opinion is a little different. When you're singing a song, everybody is trying. That's not everybody good at it, but everyone is trying to sing the same. They're trying to sing the melody. And just that act in and of itself is unifying. Yeah. Because everyone's literally trying to be on the same page. It's like, why do you think they start like ball games with a song, with the Star Spangled Banner or whatever they sing, or Take Me Out to the Ball Game, whatever it is because the singing unifies people. That's why they have singing in military. That's why they're singing in wars, singing all these things. Like when you need people to be united, you have a song. Pep rallies, all those things involve singing.
Yeah,
and it just goes right to your neshama.
Right, it does. So penetrating, so uplifting. It's just a very uplifting, I find.
I do too. I do too.
And then you sing it all day.
Yes, you do. I just
stays with you all day.
Well, that's what happened after Donnie's funeral. The boys were singing, and they were all singing together, all the same song. It's like, I don't know somebody started it, and then everybody was just singing it. And it was a song from Hallel. On the holidays when we sing the special, it's like, Ani avdecha ben amatecha. It's like, I am your servant, which said that's who Donnie was. I am your servant, God. I'm here to serve you. That they just started singing this, like hundreds of people singing this spontaneously.
Wow. And it's really touching, though. Really touching. Wow.
Amazing.
So sad, but it was beautiful what you said. And praying for Benjamin, that's got to be hard for him because he's so young and to have to experience this. It's so close to him at such a young age, I
mean, and they already had the thing with Naftali Frankel, being murdered. And so they had that, and they had to, because when the boys were missing, of course, everybody around the world was davening that they be found, those 3 boys. And so our grandchildren were doing that. And then when they were found that they had been murdered, and Benjamin and Dolly had to tell their kids, this was already a number of years ago, and they had to tell them. And I said, what did you say? And he said, we told them that they found the boys and that they had died. And Akiva, our grandson, who's now 13, he wasn't 13 at the time, was obviously much younger. He said, because they didn't have any food, like he thought since they'd been missing so long that they died because they didn't have food. And they said, no, it wasn't because of food, but bad people killed them. He said, but you don't have to worry because Hashem is going to give them a very, very big punishment. And it was like, they were like, okay.
Okay. That's interesting because you never know. You got to be so careful when you tell children stuff because you really don't know how they internalize this stuff yet.
Yeah. So, their kids have a very big awareness of Hashem in their life. And they said Hashem is going to give them a very, very big punishment. And the boys are with Hashem and they're fine. They're fine with Hashem. Their neshamas are with Hashem. And they were able to and they were too young to ask other questions. They didn't
Right.
ask any other whatever kind of questions. So they were able to take
Just
that
process that. Yeah. Sometimes a little goes a long way.
Right. You don't have to say the whole thing. It's like sometimes people talk about Holocaust education. It's like, you do not need to, that's a big mistake to frighten kids. That doesn't, especially Jewish kids. You don't need to frighten people you can have to find ways to talk about things that are age appropriate.
Yeah. Yep.
But that are also real, because you also don't want to be, make things up. So it's like, yep, that's true. Those people are going to get a very big punishment from Hashem. And honestly, that answer works for me too. At my very sophisticated level, I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what's happening to them, because, Israel arrests them and then they release them in a prisoner exchange or blah, blah, blah. And, you could just go insane from that. It's like, they may be free now. Hashem is going to give them a very big punishment.
I always say what goes around comes around.
You don't get out of it. You don't get out of it. For better or for worse, Hashem's got your number. So you don't need to worry. It's actually one of the reasons given why the parsha of Mishpatim, that has all of the laws of damages and court and all of that stuff, is understood to be one of the most spiritual parshas, because there are situations where you take someone to court or whatever and you don't prevail, even though you were right. So what do you do with that you have been wronged? Like, what do you do with that? And the answer is what Benjamin told Akiva. You don't need to worry, because Hashem will give him a very big punishment. That it's like, don't worry. If he doesn't get punished in this world, you don't need to worry. You do everything you can within the law, and then you need to leave it to God. And that's basically the same answer. And so that's why that parsha, even though it seems kind of like dry and legalistic, requires the utmost of emunah, of faith and trust in God, because it's basically saying, human judges, and it's not a matter of whether they were bribed or there was wrongdoing. Sometimes judges make mistakes. Sometimes there's not evidence. Sometimes whatever, a number of things could happen, and we don't have control over the outcome. But should we go crazy or say, Hashem will give them a very big punishment? Don't worry. Hashem will take care of it.
Okay. Works for me.
Ellyn.
Thank you. Liz, just tell me what's behind you. What am I looking at? So you have you're muted, so I can't tell me what am I looking at?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
I have a work background, because when I do these Zoom meetings, I don't want like, I don't know, but I don't know how to get rid of it for like personal stuff. I was trying to like figure out how to make it go away, and I don't know how to make it go away. So,
well, you're ahead of me. I don't know how to make it appear. So
me neither.
My son showed me how to do. The picture. We have the company I work for has all these pictures on the website. So I knew that there were pictures. I just didn't know how to upload it. So he showed me how to do that. But now he went back to New York, so I'm stuck. I don't to make it go away when I don't want it there.
So you would appreciate the cartoon, the one square cartoon of a principal coming into a classroom saying, Donnie, you need to come to the principal's office. Your dad's on the phone and he needs your help with the computer. And it's like a kindergarten class. You're like, can you come to the office?
Yeah. Well,
so cute.
I feel like I've done a lot with my computer skills, but it's never enough. There's always more to learn.
Yes. Well, our grandkids know how to do this thing where they put like, little crowns and all this stuff on themselves and mustaches. And yeah, I'm happy if the Zoom doesn't crash while I'm teaching. Yeah. And if I can share a screen, I consider that like the highest level.
Well, but Ellyn, I've been attending Zooms. I haven't hosted a Zoom, so I had to learn how to host one.
That is a whole other category.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, oh my God, I had to do a PowerPoint presentation and share my screen and have a background and like the whole thing. So I was like, I did it. I was like, it took me like 3 days to figure it out.
I'm impressed. I wouldn't know how to do a PowerPoint. I don't know how to make a PowerPoint or share a PowerPoint.
I can make them. I've done them. I just, with this whole Zoom thing, that's where I was like, okay, now what do you do?
We've learned so much.
I know. Well, see what happens. And I keep telling my kids, see, I'm not that bad. I actually, they kept saying, Mom, did you ever do that Zoom presentation? Like, they're laughing at me.
Well, good for you, Liz.
I did it. And I only had one person help me with the background. The rest, I did the whole presentation and I shared my screen. My son-in-law showed me how to share the screen. He said, you just push this button right here. I'm like, oh, I didn't even see that button.
I told somebody that my great excitement about Zoom was at the bottom of the screen where there are the 3 dots and it says more, that's like opens up a world. I don't know if it's on, if you have it, if you're not the host, but when you are the host, there's all these things that I said, there's a whole world behind those 3 dots that of other options. It's like right clicking on something, as I had a friend who said, I never right click. I'm afraid I'll blow up the world. Like you don't know what happens in the right click.
Today I was on a Zoom presentation and it was through Microsoft, which is a whole nother platform. And I had my camera off, but apparently my sound was on and I talked to myself. And they said, Liz, can you turn your sound off? And I was like, first of all, I couldn't find the mute button anywhere. It's not like Zoom. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just leaving. I'm leaving. I can't find it. I'm so embarrassed because I'm like mumbling, like, oh, I don't even know what I was saying. I'm like, oh my God, my sound was on.
That's so funny.
You just never know. And I'm like, I have a little gadget, which is what, I do. I sell the promotional stuff. There's a little gadget that goes in the sound hole, wherever, I'm not really sure where that is, but it blocks anyone who is trying to listen in.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And I'm like, I sell those things. Now I need to
have one
plugging up my sound because I am just not, that's just not okay. So, oh, well, I don't know where it is, but
you're too funny.
That's really funny. Well, I have to say, Steve was going through some folders and he found the folder that for our cell phone for when we first got cell phones, and we had flip phones, and our original package was for 300 minutes a month.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. And we used to keep our phones off, and like he kept his phone was like in the trunk of his car. People used to. The
original phones were built into your car. It only rang if you were in your car with the car running.
Oh, we never had that. We skipped, and then we went from flip phones to an iPhone 6, and we had to go in for special lessons.
That's big change.
They're like, whoa, like, okay, you are.
You were going from the Flintstones to the Jetsons
in one fell swoop. I said, I just figured, why bother with all the intermediate steps? I'll just wait until I can just leap right above.
So funny. All right, I'm sending.
All righty, it's good to see you.
Thank you so much. I will talk to you soon.
Okay, take care. Bye, Liz. Good to see you.
Very beautiful tribute. Really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it with me. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.